And I started. Okay, there we go. The recording's going. Okay, so I added sesame seed to my almonds when I started this. And the reason I do that is it adds a richness to your almond milk that I really like. You don't have to add the sesame seeds, but it just adds another quality to it. And then there is a date in here, and I soak the date too, so that when I put it through the blender, it goes really easily. So we start by rinsing this off. You want to rinse your nuts or seeds or whatever you're using, because the outside edge of them has those enzymes that inhibit digestion, and they keep it from growing when they get just maybe a tiny bit of rain, but not enough to really grow the seed. So we're gonna rinse this. Yeah, you can see. Do a really good rinse on it. And then it's going in the blender. Now, I have a Cuisinart, and that does a real good, if you have a powerful blender, that'll do a really good job of it. If you have a less powerful blender, the thing is you'll need to be more careful that you do get plenty of soak time to soften things up. So you put it in the blender, and then we're going to put water with it. Now, the amount of water we put in is determined by what we're making. If we're making almond cream, you only want to put about an equal amount of water. If you're making almond milk, you'll add more water to it. So put some water in here. Take it and put it on the blender and let her rip. You want to make sure that you do a really thorough job on blending it, because now we got to get it through this. So what I do is I take my quart jar, it's a wide mouth quart jar that I soaked it in, and I stick my bag in this, and I don't want the bag to go all the way down to the bottom, because it's, you know, it's going to drain through down to there. So I pull the bag up a bit, and I take a nice strong rubber band and I put around it right here. And so you see the bag's not going to the bottom. And I pour this, oh, we forgot the vanilla. So depending on what you're going to do with this, but usually it's something where a little bit of vanilla is nice. So I put some vanilla in it, and I'm not much for measuring everything carefully, but, and for you folks that you know how expensive vanilla is now, let me tell you how to make your own. So I took a jar about like this. This was an olive oil jar. I put 4 of the pods in. Vanilla comes from the orchid family, and it grows those nice long pods. You take the pod and you just barely split it. You don't want to cut it in half. You want to split one side open. Stick them in here. You fill it up with, usually what is used is either a brandy or a whiskey or something with alcohol in it, whatever you want. And then you let it go for 6 months. And you have your vanilla extract in essence. Pour off as much as you want to use for the next 6 months. And then you fill it up again. And you can keep that going for years. And those same vanilla beans will make really good vanilla extract. So that's the way to do it at home and not have it cost you near so much as if you had to buy it fresh every time. Okay, so we're pouring this in here. We're going to do about 2 batches on this. And then the trick is picking it up without letting it drop down to the bottom. You can see it's starting to drain through. And you can let it sit and go do something else if you want, or if you're in more of a hurry, you just pull it up, grab that rubber band, pull the thing up. And you want to be gentle with your bags, but oops, lost a little there. Where did I put my sponge? But still, you take and gently squeeze. And I like to do a lot of it in a bowl. It's just easier than that jar. So I transfer over to the bowl. And I do it here. And I squeeze this out. And what's coming out is your almond milk or cream. And you can do this with any nut that you want. It's just the larger the nut, the longer you're going to want to soak it. So I'm making this fairly thick, so it's more cream-like. Just be careful you don't push so hard that you break your bag. These bags are really sturdy. I had bags, this kind of bag that I've used for years, and it just keeps holding up as long as I'm careful. And then when I get done with this, now I don't want to throw away all this good stuff. So what I do is I toss it into my non-stick drying pan and I dry it. And then I can take that dried product and put it in the blender and use it to substitute some flour or something like that here and there. You can use it for other things, in other words. So you've used all of that. You've not thrown any away. So I just take this. Toss it in here. And I go back to my quart jar. And put my rubber band back on and do more. So this is basically the procedure. Then this will keep in your refrigerator. You have to keep it refrigerated, and it will keep for 3 or 4 days. You know, refrigerators, sometimes everybody's not quite the same temperature, but 3 or 4 days is probably, yeah. And this recipe that I gave you, it's a pretty small batch. You can make as much as you want at a time. Just keep your proportions the same. Go back over here. It's just so much easier. Then the end product here, I love it on my granolas or your muesli, or if you're doing an oatmeal thing, you know, wherever you use a nut milk, you're substituting a dairy product for this. So you've got something you can do all kinds of things with it. I even was making a almost like a gravy thing where I did get up some onions and garlic, and then I threw in some tahini and miso and thinned it out with my almond milk and put it over my veggies. It was really good. Okay, so we'll get rid of that. And oftentimes I set this in the sink when I'm doing it. And then you pour that out. And there you are. You've got your almond milk, and it's relatively simple procedure. Just stick it in the fridge and you're good to go. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is a cashew coconut cream. I'm using, here's the story. We no longer, I wanted to show you how to get into a coconut, but we can't get those baby coconuts anymore. A while ago, they went up to over $12 each. And then since then, we just plain can't get them. So I tried it out with several different canned coconuts, and the one that really works is this brand. Here, let me show you. It's the Native Forest organic, and I use the coconut milk. They have a coconut cream too, which is great, but for this, you only need the milk. These cans are, I'm always worried when I get in these cans, I'm going to splatter stuff all over, so I get a little help from mine. So when you open this can up, I kept this can cool on purpose because now it's nice and reasonably solid. It's not as hard as, say, a Thai kitchen one is. And these, if they're warm, the top is soft and pretty well integrated with the water. But I'm just after the coconut, not the water. And I'm just going to put it in here. I got almond in. I'm fine with that. And so we're going to put in our cashews. We'll stick in a half a cup of cashews. And this, again, is a choice for you. Which flavor do you like the best, the coconut or the cashew? If you really like the cashew and you want that to come out more, you could up the ratio of cashew to coconut. But for me, I found that a half a cup of cashew worked really nice with what was on 1 can of coconut. So then you come in and you can see how the top, it kind of breaks. It's more solid. Pull that off and put it in here. And leave the water in the can. And again, while you're doing this, you will, it depends on what you plan to do with the end product, what you're going to put in it. So the other day I was playing with this, and what I did was I started out with fresh raspberries in the bottom of this. And so I had a raspberry flavored product when I got done. And then I left it thick enough that when it was done, basically what I had was like a raspberry cream cheese. I put it, yeah, and so I put it in my pan. You can make a pie out of it with whatever you want for the shell. And it worked out just great. And so I thought this would be marvelous if you wanted to do the same thing and you use peanut butter or put chocolate. We have some wonderful chocolate powders at the co-op. You could put that in it. You could do all kinds of things with this. But here's the thing. If you're going to use like the frozen raspberries, you need to warm them up first. The only thing you want cold here is that coconut so you can get the meat off the top of the water. So what's left in here now is just, it's just, I don't know if you can see it. It's just, well, it's just the watery part down there, okay? So we're gonna go back to the blender. Now, when you're blending this, it's gonna warm up as it blends. And as it warms up, it gets a little thinner. And you like that. Because right now I'm looking at it's still fairly thick and there's not quite enough of this in. So I'm gonna add some coconut water. If I had a bunch of raspberries in there, that would serve for the liquid. But since I don't have the raspberries in there, I'm using this. When I'm done blending, I want it to be moving nicely in the blender. And it's still, once it gets cold, that coconut and the cashew will both set up better when they're cold. And it will end up quite firm. Like I say, like a cheesecake consistency. Okay, so then when you get done, you have something that pours. Because it feels a little warmer than room temperature right now. So I can just pour it in here. And I can tell you that when it sets up, it will be somewhere between the consistency of a firm yogurt and a cheesecake. And it depends on how much liquid you decide to put in it, where it's going to end up. If you want to end up with a firm cheesecake consistency, add just enough liquid that it keeps moving smoothly while it's warm. If you want something, more like a yogurt, which is a thinner thing, then add a little more liquid to it. And so there you go, you got that. Now I like to use this as a yogurt substitute. I mean, breakfast for me oftentimes is some fruit with some nuts in it and some of this over it. And I put that in like I had yogurt, And it just, I can get a good 6 hours of work off from that breakfast. It just holds me beautifully. So that's a great way to go. Now your coconut milk, the water that's left, don't throw it out. A great thing to do with this is to cook rice. So if you're cooking some rice, throw this in it. Or even if you were doing some noodles, to get that coconut flavor and the richness, there's all kinds of things you can do with this. So save this. Okay, so let's put this here. And then are there any questions about that? Anybody have any questions? Okay. All right, let's move on to sauerkraut. Now, when you're doing sauerkraut, the key to having an easy time doing your sauerkraut is having a good vessel to ferment it in that lets the gases as they form while it's fermenting escape, but it doesn't let the air go in. And a good thing to do that we carry at the co-op these days is your kraut. It's called Kraut Source. It comes in a box that looks like this. Okay. And here's the gizmo. And it's got a lid like this. And then it has in here a spring. So you can see the top like this. And if you turn this top this way, the spring goes down, and that puts weight on your cabbage that you have in there. And you put it on your jar and you put your canning ring on it, and that holds it down. Let the weight go, and you got a lid you put in here. And there's a groove right here that you fill with water. So that's what gets the fermentation, keeps the bacteria you don't want in out. All right, so one thing about making kraut is the salt. You don't have to have salt to make kraut. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I like to make my own. Is most krauts that you can buy are just too salty for me. So here's what we're using. Brown culinary seeds. So brown culinary seeds have lactic acid in them. And the lactic acid is what gets things to fermenting. So today I'm going to use cumin seeds. So I put in, and you look at the size of the cabbage you have to determine how much is this going to make. You know, this will make a little more than a quart probably. Anyway, I'm going to put in about a tablespoon. I want at least a tablespoon of these. If you're not using any salt, you'll want to be generous with your seeds. If you are using salt, it's simply how much flavor do you want in. So any brown culinary seed, we're talking cumin, coriander, fennel, anise. You know, if it's brown and it's used in cooking and it's a seed, it fits the ticket. Okay, so you put these in, and you could put them in whole, but I like to just give them a little bit of a twirl in, just enough to start breaking them up, and that's all I need. So that does my seeds. Then you take your cabbage.
Pat?
Yeah.
I'm curious what cumin seeds are.
Cumin.
Oh, cumin. I'm sorry, I just misheard you. I thought I was going to learn a new seed.
Yep.
I wonder, have you ever tried heating them a little before you put them in so that it releases the flavor a little more?
Yeah, right. That's what I do, and you know, and I figure that probably exposes more surface. I mean, I don't like to use the powder, but the seeds. Sometimes I'll put it in whole, but not always. Now, when your cabbage, what you want, when I'm shopping for cabbage for kraut, I'm looking for a hard, heavy, firm cabbage. I don't want those nice, big, loose ones where maybe I'm going to stuff the cabbage leaves or something. And I don't care if it's red or green. Sometimes I mix them. So you want a nice, firm cabbage, and this leaf is a little bit wilted. You want something really fresh, but a couple of days ago when I was shopping, I didn't find the really fresh ones that were really firm, and I opted for really firm over really fresh. And if I'm not using any salt in my cabbage, what I'll do with this stuff, with this, and also with the core that I'm going to take out here is I'll juice it in my juicer. And then I pour that juice into the kraut. And that makes, because when you salt your cabbage, that tends to bring the juice out of the cabbage. But if you didn't salt it, that's not going to happen right away. And you'd like to have some juice on it right away. So juicing it is great. Don't have to, but it really helps. So you take the cabbage and you're going from the butt end here and you're looking at it. We're cutting it in half. Take your halves and cut them in. So you've got quarters. And you're we're using the food processor for this. Oh yeah, the food processor. So if you don't have a food processor, you can use a mandolin and that'll work. It's just more work. If you don't have a mandolin, you can use your knife and then slice it. That's even more work, but it all works. So you take this blade out. You don't want that blade in for this. And you put in, Cuisinart makes these. This is the stem, and this plate slices things thin. So you put the stem in here, and so you've got something like this that you're setting into your bowl. And I don't know if you can see, but the plate sits up at the top of the bowl. Put your top on. And you want these pieces small enough that they'll fit in there. Then I take this, I've got my stem there, and I cut it out. And again, if I were juicing, I would juice this. You put this in. Here, I'll show you. So now you can see we have, here, we should pull it out this way. We're getting our cabbage sliced. So you have nice slice, nice thin slices. And what you want is you want to get it, you want to put this in a direction so that, as you can see, the long way, this way, sits down on the flat surface. And that way you get a nice long shred out of it. Otherwise, you're just making it into, you might as well grate it. And you take your big bowl. Cabbage in it. And you keep on going. Now, this stuff that's left, don't throw it out. You save this along with your other vegetable trimmings from the day. Throw them in a pot of water and make yourself some veggie broth. So you take these cores out. Now sometimes the piece is too big. I'm going to go in. Let's see here. Yep. So then you get to where you got to modify. That's probably not gonna work. Okay, so the other thing we need to talk about here is the salt. So you can't measure all salts the same. If you have a salt that has a really fine grain, we sell that Himalaya salt that's really fine. And for that one, you would measure a lot less salt than if you're using, so if you're using this, the Himalaya, that pink salt, then it's really fine. Or if you're using the Celtic salt, which is a much coarser salt, there's air in this Celtic salt. A lot of chefs do their salt with weight measurements, not with a spoon measurement. So you need to take that into consideration. If you take this really fine salt and use it, most salt recipes are thinking about the stuff you buy in the regular grocery store, and it's kind of in between the two of these. So if you're using the Himalaya salt, go easy on it. And it's just whichever, they both work great. It's just whichever salt you happen to prefer. Okay. Okay, so you got all your cabbage in your bowl. Then you're going to take and put your seeds in. And any salt that you want. Now, if you're not using salt, it's a little bit trickier, but to get a good ferment and be sure you don't have any bacteria in there that you don't want. But it's very, very possible. For years, I did just totally salt-free kraut, and it came out just great. Usually it comes out a little bit crunchier than your other. So then you take this and mix everything up really good. And at this point, you might want to let it sit and rest for a little while. That's some bigger pieces. I can use them elsewhere. And so if you use salt, you will want to let it sit and rest for a while to bring some of that moisture out before you pack it. So then we're going to pack it. Whatever you have. You know, if you have a Vitamix, you got the plunger for your Vitamix, you could use that. Or if you have a juicer, you have the plunger for that. I went out in the yard and found a nice stick a few years ago, and it works just great. So you pack it in. Oh, and the other thing that we used to have at the co-op, and I know a couple of years ago still we had it. I don't know if we're going to get it in again or not, but let me show you in case. You can get a crock one, and you know the standard crocks are kind of a beigey grayish color. every now and then we get some of them that have this groove in them. And they tend to be bigger ones when we have them. But any crock that has that groove and has a lid that fits on it will serve the same purpose and do just great. Unfortunately, we can't get these anymore because the guy the potter that made them moved to Utah, and it's kind of expensive to be importing heavy stuff like this. So they were pretty expensive to start with. So you take this, and you got it in here, and you beat it down.
Hey, Pat, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you weight the sauerkraut in the crocks, or do they need that?
When I use that kind of kraut? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so usually when you get, and the crock carries a lot of these, different size weights like this that you can put in and use as a weight. Now, when I'm using this crock and I use that weight, I like a little more weight on, especially if I'm doing a salt free. So here's my weight. Rocks. I have kitchen rocks. I've had kitchen rocks for decades. So this rock's kind of flat on that side, and I stick it in there and adds more. I got a bigger crock, and I use a bigger weight in it because it'll fit in.
I love that you use sticks and rocks.
My friends from South India taught me about using, you want to smash your garlic, or you want to just put a little bit of something to smash on your spices or your herbs. There you go. Rocks are marvelous. Okay, so when you get this, now when you're using that kraut source, you can fill this pretty full. When you're using a crock like that, you have to have enough room in the top to get those weights in, so you can't fill it as full. But you want to get this full enough that the weight puts a lot, exerts the, because that stem's only so long on it, and it needs to go down and get pressure on top of what you've got here. So you'd be amazed, you fill it over full and then it just goes down in. Okay, so then you take this, clean your rim off. You put this here, and you got to get the ring on it next. Well, this is just a wide mouth standard canning jar. You take the ring and you do this, and you see how it goes down in, and that is putting pressure on the cabbage in there. Now, fermentation, if you're just setting it on your kitchen counter, you're going to want probably a week. You want to put water in here, and all you have to do during that week is make sure that this water doesn't all evaporate. Keep water in. For me, where I ferment my stuff is I have a closet, and in that closet is my hot water tank. And on the top of my hot water tank is the pipe with hot water that goes out the top. So I put my jar next to that, on a towel next to that pipe, and I wrap a big towel around the pipe in the jar. So I can get 7 weeks of fermenting in about 7 days of fermenting in about 5 days. because it's warm. You don't want to get too hot, but that's just a nice warmth, and it keeps it pretty much that temperature all the time. So it's up to you and what your circumstances are, where you're going to choose to ferment it, how long it's going to take. And you can, the 3-4 days, go ahead and take the lid off and smell it, take a little out, taste it, see where you're at. If you do it a little less time, you will get a crunchier cabbage. If you use salt and go a long time, you're going to get a pretty soft cabbage. You'll get a little crunchier if you don't use salt, even if you do go longer. But the things that make it softer are the length of time and the amount of salt. Are there any questions about the kraut?
No, I have one question, Pat.
Yeah.
Do you get this complete gizmo at the co-op, the jar and that little cup you put on top?
Everything is co-op, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the kraut source, this top thing, I didn't see any at the west side, at the east side yesterday, but the west side has 4 of them, at least. And I've got this one in the box I'm going to return because I just wanted to show you the box, what it looked like. And they are $31.99. You're going to have tax under that. But here's my experience with people starting out with kraut. If they try doing it without something that doesn't let the air into your kraut while it's fermenting, the top tends to go bad, and then you have to keep peeling that off, and you lose a lot of product. You have to keep monitoring it. It's kind of discouraging. People tend to give up when they do that. If you'll invest in something like this, makes it so easy to do. And almost never, I never had one go bad when I did this for my crops that have that feature on top. So you don't lose your product, and you don't really have to think about it. I put a note by it. This is the date I started it. And maybe I'll put a reminder on your phone or your wherever that, hey, don't forget to check the kraut today, kind of thing, 3 or 4 days out or whatever, so you don't forget. But yeah, and so the things I do most often are sauerkraut and kimchi in this. I have done sauerkraut where one time we were having a raw food party here, and I wanted to do wraps, unusual wraps. So it was during the season when we had big turnips. And I got myself some big turnips. Now we've got big watermelon radishes. You could use those. And I sliced them really thin on my mandolin. And I layered them in with my sauerkraut. And so they fermented. Turnips are great. You can add other vegetables. Turnips are marvelous. And so then I had these nice, flexible, fermented turnip sheets that I could put a filling into, use as a wrap and put a filling into it. It was really fun. So you can do all kinds of things with it if you think about it.
But I have one question. What's the main difference between the sauerkraut and the kimchi?
Kimchi has a lot more variety of vegetables, and it's very spicy, heat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pat, I think you may have covered this, but Chris texted or chatted a question. Any potential problems with the fermentation we need to be aware of to avoid? Could it go off before it's ready?
Yeah, right. Yeah, like I say, if you have this kind of a top, you're okay. If you don't have this kind of a top, you're in there almost every day checking it and skimming stuff off the top and making sure you don't have mold forming on the top. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a real involved, you have to stay with it process if you don't have this kind of a top on it. And it's very easy if you do have this kind of a top.
So if you have that kind of a top or you're weighting it down in the crock, you just wait for 5 to 7 days and then test it.
Yeah, or, you know, depending on what you're up to. Sometimes I'm using the kraut for something. If I were like doing a salad that I wanted some ferment, but some crunch, whatnot, I might do it like 3 days and then use it for that. Now, when you get done fermenting it, you're going to put it in the fridge, whatever kind of lid you want on it, you're going to put it in the fridge, and it will, it still ferments a little slowly, but there's a fermentation process that also goes on in the fridge that's a little bit different. And so the flavor will change. Now, fermented products like this will keep in your fridge easily a month. 2 months, you're pretty good. 3 months, you're starting to tell, oh, this is in here. It's still okay to eat, but it's just not as fresh. Yeah.
And Pat, one question, it doesn't have to be in a dark place. It can stay in your kitchen, right?
It can stay in your kitchen. Yeah.
Okay,
Just
thank
takes
you.
longer, right? Hopefully your kitchen is warm enough to do it. I mean, you'd like to have your kitchen up to 70 degrees, let's say, to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes when I have too much going in the kitchen and I want to have more, make more, I put it close to my wood stove. You know, it gives it some
Yeah.
extra warmth. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I've heard that most people have failed with making the sauerkraut at home because you have to keep on peeling off the bad layers, like you say. So getting the right equipment, the right gadget is the key, I think.
Yeah, right. That's really it. You know, when you put the stuff in your bowl, make sure you mix it up good. And, you know, when you're working with something you're going to ferment, make sure that your board is clean, your knife is clean, your hands are clean before you start. Because you're letting whatever bacteria are with this grow and ferment. And so you want to be mindful of what you're putting in there bacteria-wise.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And Pat, there's another question from Chris.
Yeah.
Who says, I got that type of jar, but the top inch layer got a bit discolored. It went gray when I tried making sauerkraut before. Is that okay?
Say that again.
She has the type of jar,
Yeah.
but the top inch layer got a bit discolored, went gray when I tried making sauerkraut before. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. You can put whatever you want in here. A lot of people with their krauts choose to put all kinds of things in. You know, another good thing to put in it is some seaweed. Sea palm is a particularly good one to use. The sea palm, we carry it in the bulk sections with the seaweed. It looks very expensive, but it's really lightweight, so it's not that expensive. And you could cut up some sea palm or break it or whatever and mix that in with this too. Or you could use kelp powder if you wanted to instead of salt too. And you know, adding seaweed to it's great, or other vegetables, or yeah, whatever you feel free to. When you look at kimchi, the basis of kimchi is usually something like daikon or some kind of cabbage, something from the cabbage family, or those roots like daikon. And they put all kinds of vegetables and things in them and ferment it. So, and you could, some people will add some water to it. Now, here's the thing. If you live in the city, if you live anywhere where you're on city water, it's probably got a touch of chlorine in it. Chlorine will kill those friendly bacteria. So you're going to lose some of those friendly bacteria. So I would, if you're if you're going to add a little water to it to get more juice, you say you don't have a juicer and you want more liquid in there to start with, you could add water, but get the filtered water. Okay, any other questions about that?
I was just going to add that sometimes my jar of sauerkraut in my fridge goes a little gray at the top, and it still tastes fine. I think it's just that more air is getting
for
to
quite a
it.
while when it does that out there.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So let's look at this. Very good. Yeah, so this is the coconut cashew cream I made, and already it's setting up. You see, I tip it over and it's not, it goes to here, but it's not running. So like I say, the beauty of this is you could use it for a dip when you're doing it in the blender, maybe put whatever flavor you want, some spring onions, some garlic, some artichokes, some whatever you wanted. Or you can use it for dessert. Get your little tart pan out, put a bottom on, and then throw some chocolate in with it, or some peanut in with it, or some fruit, or whatever, and it'll set up beautifully. So I suggest you take the recipe and play with it, and so you get more familiar with how in your blender it works, what consistency you want it, and you're feeling what temperature that is, because like I say, the warmer the runnier. So you know what consistency you're at. Pour it out, put them in the fridge, and see how it sets up. And you know, there's no exact measurements with this. Play with it, have fun with it. More cashews, maybe more coconut milk and less cashews. Put some peanut butter in it, you probably want less cashews. And with the coconut, you could do a peanut butter coconut thing with just a few cashews in it. And then when you got done, you could hand stir in some chocolate chips if you wanted to, and make a little tart or pie out of it. So have fun with it.
Pat, Chris is wondering if you can whip it.
Like you can whip coconut cream.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't do very well that way. Maybe I haven't just tried hard enough, but I haven't had whipped that way. But you know, you can take the coconut cream and whip it up and put it on top of whatever you use. Because the coconut cream, when you get native forest coconut cream, that will whip up. Any other questions? Okay. Pat,
I feel like you really demystified some things for me and made it look all so easy. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's fun sharing what I know in the kitchen. I really enjoy it. So if any of you want something else in the way of classes, I mean, I was thinking a fun thing would do a rice class where we take like a boreal rice and make risotto, or a basmati or something, and make an Indian spicy, or maybe a saffron rice. Do a few rice things like that. When you want to make a rice that'll stand on its own, or can be used with if you're going to put a curry or something over it. So if that's anything that interests any of you, just let us know. Yeah. And then we could do a summer salad thing when we get closer to summer. I mean, green salads can be really fun and interesting. And I mean, half the time my greens, they don't have any tomato in them. They've got, well, I'm rummaging through the fridge and seeing what I've got, and then making an interesting dressing to go with it or something like that. So that if I get home from a day's work and I'm tired, usually what I have for dinner is a salad, but I put like toasted nuts on it and maybe a hard-boiled egg with it, or just stuff to make it a real filling salad. So just let the co-op know what you're interested in the way of classes.
I love both of those ideas and I would take them both.
Yeah, I think those are really good ideas.
Okay, just let me know. I'm happy to teach whatever folks are interested in. Okay, well, we went through, I didn't know, Posey, you said you had to leave early and we started late, so
I know I'm kind of stuck to it, and I didn't go do what I wanted to do because I was interested in what you were doing.
okay, great, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, you really kept it moving, Pat. It was very interesting. Thank you so much. And again, my apologies for what happened. I had no idea that would ever happen. I'm going to be contacting Zoom and Eventbrite and letting them know and asking them how to prevent that in the future.
I think that will give us maybe a little bit of a challenge to make sure it doesn't happen again.
But thank you
And,
for just keeping on and making it happen. And I really appreciate that. And I'm so happy that it will be recorded for other people to be able to watch, because it was very
Thank you for coming in spite of how it started.
it was very informative.
Yeah.
oh, and Monica, when do you think the recordings would be available so I can look through it before I start making my stuff?
Well, I'll have it on my computer, so I could probably figure out how to share it with you. But with, we just restarted classes, so this batch of classes, these winter classes, are us restarting. I'm a new coordinator, so I had to learn how to do everything, and our past coordinator doesn't work here anymore, so I couldn't really get trained. I just had to go into Eventbrite and figure out how it worked. And so putting the classes up on the website is another learning curve that I need to work through with our website coordinator.
Okay,
And
maybe yeah, if I can send you my email, you can at least share it with me in the meantime. And I want to.
Yeah, the co-op has a YouTube account, so maybe I can upload it onto the YouTube and people can have that.
Oh yeah, that's easy to do. Yeah.
Figure out. Yeah, I'll work on that this weekend, Fazia.
All right, no hurry. Just that before I make it, I have to look through it again. I was kind of distracted in the beginning. So. Okay, thank you, Pat.
No, you're so welcome.
Yeah, I wish we have more time to talk about our cooking during our shifts, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun to have the time to just really focus on that. So one of the things I really appreciate about the classes. I also just have to say, I just love Pat's kitchen. I love the tree limb and the cutout.
The tree limb here can
Yeah.
goes up and I can hang stuff on.
That is so cool. And then your cutting board is a burl.
I cook on the wood stove quite a bit.
Oh,
Winter,
that is awesome.
cooking on the wood stove a good part of the time.
so
That's
the
awesome.
the tree trunk you have, you just picked it up from somewhere and you stuck it on the table?
Oh yeah, this was growing in my yard.
Ah,
Yeah. I was looking around the yard. Where's what I want? That was a plum tree.
okay.
But yeah, it
And
got rot in it, so we had to take the tree down and go, oh, I'm taking that one. Yeah.
Now that's reusing, and I love how you use rocks and sticks for your sauerkraut too. That's awesome.
That comes from my times working with the Indians from Chennai that were excellent chefs. They were musicians, but they were excellent chefs. Yeah, when I was at the UW, I was in the ethno music department. We were a brand new department with a couple dozen people in it. And we would get these visiting artists from India, and I would kind of serve as a hostess for them to help them with their shopping and their cooking. They were so good in the kitchen. They had company most nights, so I'd help them with that. It was really fun.
Well, thank you so much.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I'll be letting folks know when the videos are available.
Okay, great.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again. Bye-bye.